Hey everyone, it's Simone Watson, and I want to talk about the basic types of editing and the basic types of editor. And in this case, we're talking about book editing. Um, I filmed this video earlier, but I felt like it was a little bit unclear in some things. So there's something I really want to emphasize that I'm not sure if I said there. But if you are a self-published author, you do have to pay for certain parts of the process. I mean, unless you do them yourself, right? But if you are a traditionally published author or if you were pursuing traditional publication, I just want to emphasize you do not have to pay for the publishing process. So when I talk about editing in the sense of traditional publishing, it is not something that the author pays for. The publishing house pays you for your book, and then the publishing house gets it edited. So I just wanted to make that clear so that there's no like real confusion here, because we're talking about freelance editors versus acquisitions editors and different things like that. Okay, so the three basic types of editing, sorry, I accidentally winked at you. Okay, the three basic types of editing are content or developmental editing, line editing, and copy editing. There is also proofreading, which a lot of editors do. It is sometimes considered a type of editing. And there are other things that editors do, such as professional beta reading, book coaching or like author coaching. And there's something that's, I would call it book development. Sometimes this is called developmental editing, but for the purpose of this video, I will use developmental and content editing to mean the same thing. Book development is when someone helps you take your idea from an idea to a book. Or if it's nonfiction, I guess they could help you take it from an idea to a proposal, okay? So some editors may do that. But so we're going to focus on the three main types of editing, right? Content or developmental, line, and copy. Okay, content or developmental editing is what a lot of people call, a lot of people describe it as big picture edits. Things that have to do with your story, your overall story arc, your plot, what is working in terms of the characters, what is working in terms of the point of view, or what is not working. You might say it should be single POV rather than dual. You might say like this scene needs to be deleted, or this character doesn't have to be here, or what's the motivation? Like, is the main character's motivation is not clear here. So there are a lot of things you can do that are story related, plot related, and character related. I think that was the third one. Yeah, story related. Yeah. So basically, yeah, plot, character, scene. You can go within a scene and say like, man, this scene feels really, I don't know, just different things within the scene that are happening, and you can say how those things could be made better. And so one of the questions that might be asked about content or developmental editing is, how is it different from beta reading or being a critique partner? This is a good question. A beta reader in general reads your book to tell you how entertaining it is and what is and isn't entertaining. A beta reader reads it like a reader, okay? Like a reader who would read a book. That's how a beta reader reads your manuscript. For me, if you're going to be traditionally published, I would not recommend that you get an editor for the most part. I would recommend you get some beta readers, then you get critique partners, then you get beta readers again. So anyway, beta readers are reading for entertainment value. They may give you a beta reader report, and it says, here's what I liked, here's what I didn't like, but they're not really going deep into the craft of writing. A beta reader doesn't have to be a writer. And sometimes this gets confused. A critique partner is almost always a writer, but a beta reader does not have to be a writer, just has to be a human who's going to read your book. Like, that's it. And tell you, I like this character, didn't like this character, didn't like this scene, blah, 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 blah. But they don't have to assess it from a deep craft level. So that's a beta reader. A critique partner is a fellow writer. A critique partner is meant to assess your writing from a craft level. You both exchange things, and Alexa Dunn has a great series going on about critique partners right now. So yeah, critique partners do go into the craft level, and they do help you brainstorm and different things like that. I have CPs. I love my CPs. I might be getting more CPs soon because I just love my CPs. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, they do help you brainstorm and they do things like that. But okay, a developmental editor gives you a long, detailed description of what needs to change. It is very detailed, okay? Um, in terms of traditional publishing, we are going to get to what an acquisitions editor does, but one of the things an acquisitions editor does is developmental editing. The way they do this is through what is called an edit letter. This is a long, detailed letter about exactly what the editor thinks would make the book better. And, some things that the editor likes, but what would make it better? Long, detailed. I just want to very much emphasize this. It is not like a one page, hey, it's not one page of beta reader feedback. Hey, love beta readers. I'm not throwing shade at beta readers, but this is not that. This is also not like a book review, okay? This is a very, very detailed process. Some people talk about edit letters being 7 pages, 10 pages, like just really long and just going into like everything. So that is how developmental editing is different from having a critique partner, because usually a critique partner does not give you a letter like that. And usually the kind of the type of things you're talking about are different, if that makes sense, sort of. Okay, so that's developmental editing. Line editing is when you go sentence by sentence and say how the sentences sound and how the paragraphs sound, and you make them better, make the sentences and paragraphs sound better. So one example that I could give you very quickly is if the manuscript says, even though she knew that they already had milk, having seen her husband Tim and daughter Charlotte eating cereal at the breakfast table that morning as she rushed off to work, Stacy decided it would be a good idea to acquire more milk, and therefore she went to the grocery store, walked to the milk aisle, and promptly ran into a friend she knew from high school. That sentence gives me a headache. Not literally a headache. I'm being figurative. Even though I'm a little bit out of breath. So in that case, from what I can tell, I hope I didn't make mistakes there, but from what I can tell, the sentence is grammatically correct, but it doesn't sound good and it doesn't look good on the page because it is a very long sentence. So for line editing, you may say, how can we break up this information into multiple sentences? Different things like that. Or if the prose is not quite flowing, if the author tends to use the same words or phrases over and over again. Oh, and redundancy is something that comes up probably in both developmental and line editing, right? So if you have like something that happens in like every scene or something that happens multiple times in the book, developmental. But in line editing, if you have a phrase that appears over and over and it just gets, it just gets really not great, a line editor can come in and talk about that, okay? Then you have copy editing, the third basic type of editing. Copy editing is assessing on a sentence level again, but this time it is for correctness. It is for grammar, spelling, and punctuation, okay? That is the point of copy editing, is to get make the sentences correct. It is less subjective than the other types. For the most part, it's not subjective, but it is very time consuming. It's hard for me to say which one is the most time consuming because it may depend on different things, like the manuscript. It may depend, I don't know. Plus, are you copy editing something that has been line edited, which makes it, I don't know. So it depends on a bunch of factors. But for me, I have copy edited something that was an 8-page sample. And it took me 2 hours and I did not expect that to happen. So that's 8 pages is about 2,000 words. So that's 1,000 words per hour. So if you think about a whole manuscript as being about 70,000 words, that's 70 hours of work. So yeah, copy editing can be quite time consuming, but it is very useful. because when a book is going out into the world, you want the grammar to be right. Okay? So, proofreading is a thing as well. Proofreading is similar to copy editing. Different sources tell you different things about what the difference is. That was a redundant sentence. If I were line editing what I just said, I would be like, no, that sentence is redundant. Okay? The difference between proofreading and copy editing, a lot of times proofreading comes later than copy editing, so it's like it's already had a passive copy editing. But proofreading does have to do with mistakes. I think proofreading also has to do with visual mistakes. If you took your book and you formatted it for the pages, a proofreader would go and look and see if like a word is like cut off at the wrong place, like in between the line and the next line. I am not fully certain, so I'm sorry if I got that wrong. Okay, so we will talk about types of editor, okay? So there are independent freelancing editors, there are editors that freelance with a company, and there are acquisitions editors who work for a company. There might be other types of acquisitions editors. There might be other types of editors that work for a company, but generally I hear of acquisitions editors. So an independent freelance editor is usually hired by self-published authors. When you self-publish your book, you want to put the best possible product out there. So it is recommended that you get it professionally edited. Some people are hesitant because it can be quite expensive. And I understand that. And so if you can't afford to get it edited, then definitely try to self-edit the best you can. But I recommend, even if you are a freelance editor, to get a freelance editor for your self-published book, simply because you're the person who wrote it, and it can be a little bit harder for you to spot mistakes than for someone else to spot mistakes. So one question that people might get, and people asked Alexa done this as well, is, do I need a freelance editor if I am pursuing traditional publication? I'm going to say 98% of the time, no, you do not. No, okay? So don't think as a newbie writer, you just finished your first draft of your first novel and you have to go send it to an editor and spend some money. No. Most of the time, you do not need professional editing if you're pursuing traditional publishing. If the grammar in your story is very flawed to the point where it's hard to understand while reading, you might want to get a copy editor. Because I am an editorial intern and I'm about to start a new job as an editor. But being an editorial intern is just really difficult when you have to read a manuscript where you can't really understand what it's saying because of all of the errors. But even then, you don't really have to. Like, most of the time, I'm actually gonna take this back. Grammar is something that you can fix on your own. It may be hard, but you can fix it on your own. Don't think you have to pay an editor. I don't want you guys to doubt your own ability so much that you think you have to hire an editor, because you're awesome. You're capable of more than you think you're capable of. And so generally, you probably don't need an editor. You can probably workshop your book with beta readers, workshop it with critique partners, and self-edit, and your manuscript can just be beautiful, and you can send it off to agents. It will be great. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just want to note that. It doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm sorry for saying the part about copy editing. You probably don't need copy editing. And even if you do have a lot of grammatical errors, you can fix them. You can practice, okay? You can get that practice. I believe in you, okay? So, no. If you're pursuing traditional publishing, you don't need a freelance editor. So there are then freelance editors who freelance with a publishing company. Usually these are copy editors. What happens is the publishing company does developmental and line edits on the book, and then they send the book to a freelance copy editor, and bada bing, bada boom. Okay. The third type of editor that I'm going to list here, that I'm going to talk about here, is an acquisitions editor. So an acquisitions editor works for a publishing company. an acquisitions editor's job is sort of funny because it's a two-part job. There's acquisitions and there's editing, but it goes together, right? So an acquisitions editor, you're a writer, right? You say you're a writer, you have a manuscript and you have a literary agent. Your literary agent approaches this editor and says, "Hey, my writer has a manuscript about such and such and such." Maybe by email, maybe by phone, they talk about it. If the editor is interested, the editor requests the full manuscript. From what I have heard, there is no like partial, and in my experience, there's no partial. There's a full manuscript. So the editor requests the full manuscript, reads it, and either accepts it, or either rejects it or tentatively wants to accept it and brings it to what's called, I think it's called an acquisitions meeting. So an acquisitions meeting is when a bunch of people at the publishing house get together and decide whether they want to buy this book. So this is a huge part of an acquisitions editor's job because this is where the process starts. Once that editor has acquired your book, that editor will do a developmental edit, will send you the edit letter, you make these changes by a certain deadline, and you send, the manuscript back. Then the acquisitions editor, will line edit. And you'll complete the line edits, send it back, and then your book will be sent to copy editing freelancers, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, the biggest difference between an acquisitions editor and a freelance editor is that acquisitions editors acquire, and acquisitions editors are paid by the publishing company. They are not paid by the author. Author, you do not have to pay the publishing company. Okay? You don't have to pay the publishing company. So again, I just don't want to make you guys worried, or I don't want to give you a confusing message. You don't have to pay the publishing company pays you, and the publishing company pays the editor, and the publishing company pays a bunch of other people, right? Okay, so thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, just let me know. If you have any questions about my internship experience, I can tell you. If you have more detailed questions about the types of editing, what I can probably do is, like, if you guys are interested, I can put like a screen, I can use a computer screen, the thing where you film your computer screen, and like show you and edit one of those three types of like a sample to show you what I would do if editing that sample. Or just let me know if you have any questions or anything. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.